The 2014 NBA draft is one of the most underrated NBA drafts of all time, considering there are so many notable players in the lottery. And yet nobody talks about this draft. And this draft holds the two best centers in the league right now, Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid. So we're doing a redraft right now, and cue the intro. The Cleveland Cavaliers had the first pick in this year's redraft, and with that pick, they should have selected Nikola Jokic from Serbia. Nikola Jokic is widely considered as the greatest center in the league right now, and he would have been a dominant force with Kyrie Irving. Jokic was the 41st pick originally in the draft, but sky-high expectations and became one of the best centers in the league. And he's always had a chip on his shoulder, and at the time, that's what the Cleveland Cavaliers really needed. They needed someone who could get buckets also as a center who really knew the floor quite well and was a modern NBA big. And Nikola Jokic fits all of those boxes in the categories. The reason Jokic didn't go first overall in 2014 originally was because nobody had knew of him before the draft because, well, he was from Serbia. The Milwaukee Bucks had the second pick in that year's draft, and with that pick, they should have selected Joel Embiid. Just imagine what a Joel Embiid-Giannis Antetokounmpo duo could have done together. Joel Embiid would probably be the number one option in my opinion, and they would be one of the most dominant teams in NBA history. And I really don't want to imagine a Joel Embiid-led Milwaukee Bucks team along with Giannis Antetokounmpo. And Embiid could have been even better because the Milwaukee Bucks might have been able to cure his injuries earlier on in his career better than the Sixers did. I mean, you're pairing two 25-point-per-game scorers along together who can heat up at any moment, and Joel Embiid would be getting a championship probably in like 2018, if not sooner. Also, not to mention that Chris Middleton would also be on the Bucks. The Philadelphia 76ers had the third pick in that year's draft, and with that pick, they should have selected Zach Lavine. Lavine has become one of the most dominant guards in the NBA, averaging a smooth 19 points per game over the course of his career. And Lavine hasn't been known to have a lot of injuries, so if the Philadelphia 76ers picked Zach Lavine, the trust the process whole thing could have gone a lot faster. And plus, Zach Lavine and Michael Carter-Williams backcourt in Philadelphia would have been just insane, and there would have been no stopping Lavine or Michael Carter-Williams. In that era, the Philadelphia 76ers really needed a high flyer, but just never had the opportunity to get one. So this would be the perfect opportunity if they could redraft, and Zach Lavine definitely would have been their draft choice. But of course, this is just my opinion, so who's your number 3 pick in this redraft? The Orlando Magic had the 4th pick in the draft, and with that pick, they should have selected Julius Randle, one of the most versatile forwards in the game today. If the Orlando Magic originally made this pick, they could have been a pretty scary team. And I'm sure that a Julius Randle and Nikola Vucevic frontcourt would have at least got to the second round of the playoffs. Randle always had the potential. It's just the work ethic that he needed a little bit of work on. And the Orlando Magic might have been able to handle that better than the Los Angeles Lakers earlier on in Randle's career. Randle would have been a perfect pick for the Orlando Magic. And a big three of Julius Randle, Nikola Vucevic, and Evan Fournier would have been scary. And I think they probably would have been at least a 5 or 6 seed in the East. Plus, if this happened, Julius Randle probably would be averaging about 30 points per game by now. The Utah Jazz had the 5th pick in that draft, and with that pick, they should have selected Andrew Wiggins out of Kansas. Wiggins was a liability and inconsistent player in his first few years in the league, but has had a pretty successful career, averaging 19 points per game. Not to mention that an Andrew Wiggins-Gordon Hayward forward lineup would have been crazy, and Andrew Wiggins would have been put in a better situation than he was in Minnesota originally. Although I honestly don't think Wiggins would be averaging as many points per game if he got drafted by the Utah Jazz, although I do think his defense would have been a little bit better early on in his career and just now. Wiggins was always a stud, but it's just how he used that dominant performance to win. And with the Utah Jazz really would want him to be a winning type of player, and the Utah Jazz honestly would have been a 4 or 5 seed in 2015. The Boston Celtics had the 6th pick in the draft, and with that pick they should have selected Spencer Dinwidee. Spencer has been a great 13 point per game scorer over the course of his career, and would have been a way better draft choice than their original pick, which was Marcus Smart. Dinwiddie would have been a better pick because that's just the type of player that Spencer Dinwiddie is. He chases after greatness, and that's exactly what the Boston Celtics want in their organization. They look for players that chase after greatness to win championships, and that's just who Spencer Dinwiddie is. He's had a chip on his shoulder since he was a kid, and the Boston Celtics like those type of players. Plus, Dinwiddie actually has been a great player, and he might have been even better with the Boston Celtics because of the situation he would have been put in with them. I honestly think he could have been averaging 20 points per game for his career by now. The Los Angeles Lakers had the 7th pick in that year's draft, and with that pick, they should have selected Aaron Gordon. Gordon's become one of the best role players in the NBA today, averaging some great numbers. 12 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists. And Kobe Bryant was also looking for a great supporting cast in those days, but the Lakers just would not give him it. So Aaron Gordon would be the perfect pick to fit alongside Kobe. I mean, Gordon just is not a top 4 pick potential, but he is a 7 or 8 pick potential. So this would have been a stellar pick for the Los Angeles Lakers, and this also fits Aaron Gordon's style more than a number 4 pick does. Plus, the Los Angeles Lakers are a great organization, so maybe they could have gotten to deal with Aaron Gordon's inconsistency early on in his career and put a stop to it so he could become one of the most versatile stars in the league today. The Sacramento Kings had the 8th pick in that year's draft, and with that pick, they should have selected T.J. Warren. Mr. T.J. Warren is one of the best scorers in the NBA right now and had a crazy game last season where he had 53 points. And that's what the Sacramento Kings needed and also just need right now because they have had a very bad franchise and have had some very sucky scorers. So T.J. Warren would have been a good fit and could get the Sacramento Kings tons of timely buckets. Plus, Warren is a very efficient scorer with 50% field goal percentage over the course of his career combined. That's what the Sacramento Kings needed at a time like that, and you can't deny that those are some great numbers from a player who has honestly been a great role player for his entire career. And that's why that would have been a stellar choice for the Sacramento Kings at the time. The Charlotte Hornets had the 9th pick in the draft, and with that pick, they should have selected Jusuf Nurkic, the Bosnian Beast. Nurkic has become one of the best starting centers in the league right now, putting up about 12 points per game over the course of his career, and a Jusuf Nurkic and Kemba Walker-led Charlotte Hornets team would have been a pretty good roster and a pretty decent team with maybe like a 5 seed in the Eastern Conference at best. And Nurk would be a huge reason for that. And Nurkic doesn't just score the ball. He's also one of the best passing big men in the league today, and that has been acknowledged by many people. Plus, he's a great defensive stopper, and the Charlotte Hornets would have gotten the jackpot picking him at the time. Nurkic was originally picked 16th by the Chicago Bulls, but him getting picked a few picks up would have been more sufficient. The Philadelphia 76ers also had the 10th pick in the draft, and with that pick, they should have selected All-Star sixth man Jordan Clarkson. Getting Clarkson and Lavine in the same draft for the Sixers would have been a great move at the time. You get a great star player and Jordan Clarkson, a great sixth man who can give you 15 to 20 points a game off the bench. If you just look at Jordan Clarkson's raw numbers, it's incredible, but it's not just that. It's how he gets defensive stops and the charisma he plays with. Clarkson is one of those guys when the coach asks him to go get a bucket, he can get a bucket. And you don't see a lot of those guys in the NBA because it's just so hard to do what Clarkson does. And Clarkson would have been a great three-point shooter, which is just something that the Philadelphia 76ers just did not have in that era. I'm talking to you, Ben Simmons. And that's why Clarkson would have been a great pick for the Philadelphia 76ers.
Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Click subscribe, turn notifications on, like, share, comment, all the good stuff. And as always, I'm your boy Happy We're Basketball, and we're out.